the northern part of Africa, and it's working.
But do you actually see that there would have been any of this penetration without actually of invading the country first?
We haven't invaded any of the countries of North Africa.
No, I mean Afghanistan.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the same, the effect is the same. Now, in Afghanistan, we were able to link up with the Northern Alliance. It may be because the Taliban, in fact, nobody's ever really had control over all of the territory of Afghanistan, that we could have done stuff there. Certainly there are various times in the past where we had opportunities to do things and we screwed things up. But if we go back to North Africa, to Mediterranean dialogue, that is actually working. That is actually, getting them, in this case, to have military reforms.
Okay, but in terms of Afghanistan, that would not have been an effective way to go about things.
Well, but the thing is, even with countries that you start off with as implacable enemies, you can actually come together and start cooperating on things. Okay, another example, saying, we were actually talking to the Taliban government of Afghanistan over various things before 9/11, before we decided to go in. And there was some progress being made. If you remember, there was criticism made because they would talk about whether they would hand over bin Laden or not. Look at Russia as the successor state to the Soviet Union. The USA and the Soviet Union, in fact NATO and the Soviet Union, were pretty implacably opposed to each other. And yet now we have confidence building measures with Russia, the successor state. Is it perfect? Are relations with Russia good? No. But we've managed to set something up where we've got open skies, so we've got overflights, so many every year over each other's territory as a confidence building measure. We're cooperating on disaster management and so on. So they started off about as far apart as it's possible to be, literally pointing nuclear weapons at each other's capitals. Getting down to the point where it was somebody, some guy who thought he was a mistake and decided not to press the button. That's how close we were to, that's how opposed they were to each other. And they've managed to talk, to get round and do things. And you've got many other examples of it around the world. And the line you're taking quite often, the hostility, actually makes it rather harder for people who are working either in a country or in a Western country or between a Western country and another country to support the moderates, because you're feeding into this narrative that the West is opposed to Islam.
I think, and we've sort of agreed on this tangentially, that there are actually attributes to Islam that do actually make it less plastic, less able to take on such ideas. The thing about praying 5 times a day, the sacrilegiousness of the text and of drawing prophets and things like this. There are elements that I really don't. These are elements that you really want to keep out of the West, I mean, do you see, if you had a choice, this is, if you like, a way of evaluating these two factors, is making life more difficult for relationships in this mainstream Islamic bloc, is that more valuable than keeping the flow of these properties of the Islamic religion, the censorship and that such like? Is it more valuable to keep those out of the West, or is it more valuable to try and keep cushy relations with trying to modernize the Islamic world?
I don't think we can make that dichotomy, that distinction anymore, because we've got
no. But in terms of value, you can actually give those things value and say which one you think is more valuable. Now, I mean, obviously,
because I think the one leads to the other. We've got people in country here who are, in my case, who are British, who have got strong connections to back home, wherever it happens to be. And so I don't think your dichotomy there actually works.
No,
Hang on. One of the ways that we encourage people in country from the Muslim communities to understand that, you know, it's not acceptable to impinge on others' freedom of speech is by managing the relationship wherever back home happens to be as well. This is why you see the Home Office, the Department of Defence, the Ministry of Defence, DND, the Quai d'Orsay, working on diaspora relations, because it's important to what's going on in country. And that, you know, one of the ways that the people in country are affected is what's going on back home. So the dichotomy doesn't hold up, I'm afraid.
No, I understand that this is not something that can be practically implemented, but in terms of these two objectives, you can give them value and decide which one is more important to you. And for me, I would be willing, right? You know, in reality, they're sort of more fuzzy, and the effects that they have are more complicated. But if you sort of distill down the decision to its simplest, you know, I think that it's more valuable to maintain freedom of speech in the West than it is to try to create more moderates in the Middle East or wherever.
I think that the one leads to the other, and the failure to do the one leads to a failure to do the other.
Hang on. So the backlash to Draw Muhammad Day, the first drawings of Muhammad, which, yes, we sort of kind of agree were as a quasi-staged event, but nonetheless, I don't think, if you're going to wait for this block of 90% Muslim countries to modernise, you're going to be there indefinitely. I think that the creep of ideas like Islamic censorship will be greater than your ability to modernise and for them to sort of drop trying to export such ideas. In other words,
I think
West
that's rather contentious, to be honest. I mean, we're not looking at all of the other effects here that this has.
But
we're not looking at at the effects this has on terrorism and radicalisation and so on. We're just looking at the one issue here. Now, I accept that it's a particular, it is a very important issue. It may be actually the most important thing. You know, freedom of speech is, it's not so much the right in itself, but what it enables us to do that's important. It's that freedom of speech. You know, what it lets us do as a society. The problem is, how do we defend that at home? Well, part of that is looking at what affects the stakeholder groups in our countries. And part of that is what's going on abroad.
But you do understand the point that I'm making is, if you take a look at what is the rate of penetration of, if you like, the ideas of being moderate in these 90% Muslim countries. I don't have the numbers, but my, with the possible exceptions of Iran and Iraq, Pakistan's probably going the other way. Would you agree with that?
I think it depends. Okay, overall, yes. But the thing is, I think it depends where you are in Pakistan. I think down on the coast, it's probably moving the right way, or not going anywhere. As you move into the interior, it's more of a problem. If you're down in Karachi, it's still a relatively, it's a city that has a certain vibe to it or something. There's a certain tolerance, which you don't get as you move into the interior. I think overall, I would probably accept I think you're probably right on that one.
And that is, if you like, why I almost write it off as a lost cause. Given the homogeneity of these countries, it is very difficult to incorporate, to transfer ideas back. If you like, once you get Muslims coming to live in the West, that's a somewhat different problem, because now they're immersed in this culture. But when it's that monochromatic, I think it really isn't very good at changing. And in that sense, I think you really need to prioritise defence of defending against importing blasphemy laws and the such like into the West.
Well, in fairness, the most recent blasphemy laws to be enacted in European Union were in the Republic of Ireland.
Let me caveat that. Let me caveat that with effective. In other words, if people actually feel uncomfortable about drawing the Prophet Muhammad or putting it in the newspapers, and that is, it's not legislated, but it is effective, right? And it's effective through the threats that have actually.
That is starting to change. It's something which I'm glad about. As I said, I don't think the way you've gone about it has actually helped matters. The other thing is it's not the same level of thing. But if you look at the Republic of Ireland, there are actually, and there are some people who've done terrific things there, where they've stood outside the Dáil in Dublin, which is the Parliament, and sort of read out various things which are blasphemous, and of course no one's done anything. But there are plays which haven't toured in the Republic of Ireland, and they've specifically said it's because of the blasphemy law. Now, I don't think it's as bad as the situation with the Ewan's Boston cartoons, for instance. They could probably have got away with it, but there is something.
It's a social pressure. It is a social pressure in the wrong direction. And in this sense,
this is the thing. I don't think saying you guys are bad is the way to deal with that social pressure. I really don't.
I think we want to be going the Ataturk way. You need to keep up the social pressure. Deal with, if you like, your problems at home before you worry about exporting them abroad.
But the point I've been making all along, which, with the greatest respect, Thunderf00t, you became quite angry about earlier on, is that Ataturk wasn't just about the religious stuff, although that was important, but about education, the literacy reforms, and about economic reforms.
Yeah.
The question is, why,
in the education reforms, it was abolishing the religious school. Actually, I'm not sure whether it was the religious schools, but they removed religion from the education system. They did. If France were to do that today, it would be seen as monstrously draconian. Yeah.
No, because France is already there.
Well, no, France is. They banned the burqa.
The only religious schools in France are private.
Yeah, but you are against religious schools anyway, yeah?
Oh gosh, yes, very much so.
Yeah.
I went to one, so yes, I am. In fact, I think I've been to 4. 4. So yes, I am very much opposed to religious schools. The point I'm making, though, is that it's not, the change, as well as not being about religious education in Turkey, it was also about increasing literacy so that people were able to actually go and find things out for themselves. It was also about the economic factors, so that there was something else there, and they could see that there was something else they could go and buy into. And rather than just going on about how Islam was bad and so on, about presenting a positive alternative modernity, and in this case saying that Turkey was going to be, Turkey's destiny was with Europe.
Wasn't really so much Europe, though, was it? It was Western values.
Well, I mean, in that case, same diff, because he saw, Ataturk saw
America.
Europe as the local outpost of civilization.
Yeah.
He was, I think I'm right in saying that he actually preferred some aspects of the US, but, different issue, and I'm not sure of my ground here. I hope you can see the point I've been making here, Thunderf00t, that I think at times your interpretation, okay, we've got different ways of looking at the world, but at times the way you've conducted yourself has been less than clear, and that it's based on.
You seem to be going on the basis that I did these things, with most of especially with the Trauma Hammer Day stuff, it was goal orientated stuff. Yeah, I mean,
What I'm saying is that you're okay. Although the goal was perhaps something I would like to see. You put it. You didn't the way you look at the world. The other effects, the externalities from what you were doing, were outweighed by what you perceived to be the benefit, what you thought the benefit would be. I think that is contentious. I hope you can see that it's not the slam dunk that you might think it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of reversing chilling effects in the West, it's a social pressure in the right direction. All right, there are there are compromises that go with that. Could it be spun in a bad way in the Middle East, whatever, in Pakistan or Afghanistan? Yeah, but I wouldn't see that as a deal breaker, in that you don't want to never do anything to offend a religion because you might offend some of its extremists, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's
look at some of the videos on my channel where I've taken the piss out of a couple of Muslims, and I did a half-hour video series denying the existence of the name of every god I could find, and specifically, I think I ended it by saying I deny the Holy Spirit, and I deny the existence of Allah, and I deny that Muhammad is his messenger, which whatever, it's that doesn't bother me. It's, how far do you go? What are you trying to do, and how do you balance the harms there? I actually don't think, Thunderfoot, that you consider, in your analysis of Islam, or what's going on in the Islamic world, I don't think you've looked at the other factors at play here in any serious way. And I don't think
But Landon, on almost every factor almost the only factors that I used to actually create the model, you've agreed with me on. That Islam does have these properties, that once you do get this very homogeneous population, it gets progressively harder for that population to incorporate change.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with you. What I'm saying, though, is that is one factor, and that there are other factors at work.
Sure.
And that, you've picked on that and said, that is the core, most important factor. What I'm saying is that is one factor, but it is not the core factor. It is not the only thing at work there, and you have to look at the other things.
To a large, okay.
Do you understand the difference there?
There are 2 points.
Do you understand the difference in what I'm saying and what you're saying?
Run that one by me again, please.
Right. As I understand it, you are saying that Islam. I've agreed with you in a lot of what you said about Islam and the effect Islam has in society, in those societies.
Yeah.
But you see that as being the most important factor, to the exclusion of everything else, and that's the thing you have to deal with. And I'm saying it is a factor, and you have to look at the round and all the other factors that allow those effects, those phenomena to exist. You see the difference there?
I see the second point that you make as something that I really didn't. Once you've established a property of the religion that has an effect that you're happy with, I don't see that you need to know anything else to take to make that an actionable item. I mean, that other things can be a factor, sure, but that's. You don't actually need to know any of that. Once you establish that Islam is a problem,
Islam in its can succeed in the form it has, say I don't know. Take an example, Saudi Arabia. Why is it that Wahhabism can do well there? Well, part of that is because you've got, as I keep going back to this because it's kind of important. Francisco Benitez is very good on this. It's a rentier state, and so you can have the central thing that can then spread out and enforce that, that phenomenon of Islam, and you don't get the development of a civil society that challenges that form of Islam.
I would agree with you in Saudi that that's a significant factor, but I would also say that none of that sort of changes the causal point that we agreed with, in part, that the fact that you have very monochromatic countries makes them fairly reluctant to change, and that you can actually sort of take action to counter that. I mean, I agree completely. I mean, Saudi's a mess, and it's a mess where there's a lot of blame to go around.
Factor, not the factor, and that's the problem I've had.
But Islam was the factor that I was addressing.
Yeah, but this is the thing. In order to, if you want to decrease the tendency of Islam to cause problems, you have to look at why it is that it's able to, why it is that it has traction. I know it's a crude way of putting it, but you know what I mean. Why is it has traction? And it's not just, the religion has some sort of mimetic life of its own. Although it does have a mimetic life.
I would say that's exactly what. I mean, let me just give you a little thought.
Hang on a minute.
Please.
But you've got to look at the other things going on there. Somebody that has put in the chat, Islam is the tool. Well, it's a tool and a cause. It's not that simple. You've got this interplay between them. I'm sorry, Thunderf00t, I interrupted you.
I agree completely. Islam is a meme. You take it out of society for 100 years, it'll never come back. The only reason that Islam propagates through society is because it is a propagating mechanism.
Like any religion.
Yeah. So I mean, but if you like, within that, you can then start adding resolution to that model. That some of these things propagate themselves better. Some of them have a propensity to have these homogeneous populations.
Well, I mean, the homogeneous thing is another issue. I mean, if you look at a country like Iran, that on your chart, I should think is extremely homogeneous. Yeah. I don't know if you have it to hand, but I should think it's pretty
black.
Much 100.
It's black. Yeah.
Yeah, Iran is not a homogeneous country. Not even from the point of view of Islam is Iran a homogeneous country. There's all sorts of things going on there. Fascinating place, actually. I'd love to visit one day.
Yeah. I mean, actually, there's one other point that I would like to make, and that goes along the lines. It's a point about stability in society. So it's a long-term effect, and it's basically about building instability into societies. And so, imagine you've got a little situation like this, and you drop a ball in here. Obviously, if you drop a ball in this side, it'll stay in this position almost indefinitely. And if you drop a ball and it goes into this side, it'll actually stay there. And these things can actually interchange, right? Mm-hmm. But they're stable. So if there's an earthquake, the ball bounces over, right? But this one is more stable than this one because the arm is longer, right? So you have to start looking at what causes instability. So, for instance, Saudi is basically this. It's a crappy situation, but it's stable almost in perpetuity, right?
But this is the J curve thing.
The point that I was actually going for is, there are actually elements that can cause instability that you want to avoid ever coming into a situation like this. And seeing as all societies that come into situations like this almost always do so for unforeseen circumstances, wars, depressions, whatever, zombie attack. But because of the so intrinsically unknowable things that cause these instabilities, you can actually plan your society to make it more stable. Right, and that's something that's probably worth thinking about.
To take your analogy, what we're trying to do is increase the length of the arm in the lower diagram without the ball.
Done.
So that when the ball shifts,
yes.
it is going to remain in that stable position.
And further, we want to make our society. We also want to lengthen it on our society, such that if instability does come, that we don't end up on the bad side of things.
Yeah.
Good.
But this is the thing. What I really don't see how the way you're going about things helps to do that.
Well, this is the thing. Multicultural societies are very good for shifting ideas around. So in that sense, they're great, right? However, that is also a liability if instability comes. I mean, I seem to recall last time we discussed, I think it was Yugoslavia, tangentially. I mean, Yugoslavia was one of these, there were all these different religions living in the same area, and it was pimped as a wonderful place of, homogeneity. Of course, that was not homogeneity, whatever, open-mindedness. But of course, that all happened under the iron fist of Russia, or USSR. Take that away.
I'm sorry? Yugoslavia under the iron fist of Russia?
Whatever, the Macedonian Civil War thing.
Sorry, hang on, Yugoslavia? Sorry, Thunderf00t. I mean, it was Marshal Tito, who was the strong man who kept it all together. Tito was opposed to the USSR, didn't want anything to do with the Warsaw Pact, and was non.
Whatever, it was a dictatorship. I mean, if you like, it was a dictatorship can keep these things together, right? And to an extent, this is what you had with Iraq as well, that you actually had a widespread mixing of Sunnis and Shia, and it was perfectly stable under the dictatorship. However, you introduce instability into that, and it very quickly polarizes down these religious lines into civil war.
A lot of that is true, but until you said it splits along religious lines. It's very much more complicated than that. Because you've got overlay. Because even in Yugoslavia, it wasn't religious lines. Okay, it was a combination of religious, ethnic, and socio-economic lines.
I agree. Iraq.
One of the reasons. Hello.
Hi. Yeah, I agree. How about Iraq?
Iraq. Between the Sunni and the Shia, religious, but not between the Sunni, the Shia, and the Kurds. Obviously, the Kurds wasn't a religious thing.
Yep, and then it becomes a turf war over oil. To
an extent, they've sorted out since they passed the hydrocarbon law in Iraq, the Kurdistan regional government have been relatively happy with the situation, the amount that they're getting from the Kirkuk oil fields.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to, I think we're starting to go around in circles here.
No, I mean the bit about the stability of societies I think was new, but.
Like I said, I know you're probably gonna accuse me of crocodile tears. I really do actually have respect for the scientific videos you've done, but the stuff you've done on Islam and politics, I think that, well, let me put it like this. I think your analysis could bear a little bit more research.
What research? I mean, we've just been discussing this for the last several hours, and we've agreed on almost everything.
No, no, I'm sorry, we haven't at all, Thunderf00t. We've agreed that there are certain phenomena. What we've disagreed with very strongly indeed is how important those phenomena are. So please don't. We agreed that there is this thing with Islam. What you said is that is the most important issue, and it's
no, that was the issue that I was addressing.
Let me finish. I'm saying is that in order to address the situation, you have to look at all of the other issues as well. That's the point I've been making.
We established very early on that when we looked at the map that there was actually causal relationship between.
No, I'm sorry. You showed that there was correlation. And
we agreed on a causative mechanism.
Let me finish, please, Thunderf00t. There is a problem there. What I said was part of the problem is Islam, okay? And that's, I stand by that. What I'm saying is you've got to look at the other factors as well to understand why Islam is able to have the generative and catalytic effect that it does. That's the position I'm taking.
Okay, and yeah, I mean, I don't really see a problem here. Whether we've identified a problem with Islam and a problem that can be addressed.
Well, as I said, in order to, for the reasons I've given, I think some of the stuff you've come up with is less than accurate. Some of the things you've said about Islam are less than accurate. Again, with I hope you would recognise that you've probably damaged the perception of Park 51, when Park 51 is actually quite a good thing. And, overall is...
like I said, Landon,
I
I don't approve of growth in religion. I mean, to say that I damaged the reputation of Park 51, yeah, I mean, it's like you might as well be saying that I've damaged the reputation of the Creation Museum. I don't see it as a good thing.
Well, I suppose this is the thing. Given, I'd rather that we didn't have religion knocking around, but I don't think we're going to be getting rid of religion anytime soon. And so the way to make religion inoffensive is to support the moderates, and that means sometimes you have to support something which otherwise you wouldn't ideally want to.
What you mean, like Draw Muhammad Day?
Except that Draw Muhammad Day was damaging, I would contend, for the reasons I've set out.
Yeah, but you would also agree that it did have it reversed the chilling effects, in part, of the first cartoon fiasco. I mean,
I would okay. What I would accept that, but I would add a caveat, and the caveat is about the downstream effects. And how it's going to be used, how the way it's used outside the West will then impact upon the West.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so there might be some sort of blowback, but if you've actually decided that that's acceptable loss for defending free speech in the West or reversing the chilling effects, then it was a good thing to do.
But I think this is the thing. Firstly, I mean, there's the issue about whether the blowback is worth it, but I don't think the blowback is going off elsewhere. I think part of it actually can increase the chilling effect at home in our countries.
I disagree completely. No, burning down embassies and having people sort of chased around and bloodthirsty mobs and the such like, that has a chilling effect. That did have a chilling effect. That's, I would be happy to say that's sort of history. I would not say, and to an extent, the chilling effects is, because people were frightened. And by showing people there's nothing to be frightened of, it's a good thing.
But the thing is, one of the as I say, you still got to deal with the downstream effects. What are people frightened of? Well, people are frightened of offending Muslims. One of the ways you stop that is by making it clear that the Muslims aren't causing a problem. You do that by making it clear that the Muslim community buys into freedom of speech, even if they don't like what you're saying.
But that's almost, I mean, the mere fact that these, look, when you've got, whatever it is, I've got the quote somewhere, the leader of Indonesia saying that, burning the Quran's going to destabilise the world or something. Here we go. President of the largest Muslim country says that burning the Quran those plans threaten the peace of the world. I mean, this is not a minor problem. I don't think you're going to get around this by sort of saying, well, if we wait, I mean, give me give me time scales on this. Obviously not set in stone or anything, but what's the sort of time scale you're expecting for moderation of the Islamic world? I mean, 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years?
I mean, the first thing is that it wasn't just the president of Indonesia, it was also the Secretary of Defense of the US who called up Salam Alad in Florida and asked him
And that's
not to do.
abysmal precedent to set. Just burning a book, right, should not actually threaten the peace of the world. And the reason that it threatens the peace of the world is because of the religion.
Well, also because you've got people in Afghanistan who aren't very well educated. You know, he wasn't saying it's going to cause problems in the domestic US. I mean, since 9/11, Islamic attacks in the US haven't been a problem.
Well, they were always operationally insignificant anyway.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they're sort of less important than, well, I've got the figures somewhere, but, whatever. But, just in terms of, the thing is, yes, operationally they're insignificant, but as we both know, they have effects beyond that. This is what Bin Laden is counting on, in that he can, his return on investment is very good. Because of what he can get the Americans to do.
This is why I would have said that the Iraq War has actually diminished this sort of thing, right? Like I say, wasn't in favour of the Iraq War, abysmally executed, false premise, whatever. But now that it's happened, the way that it appears very much to me is, if you like, everyone has seen this experiment from both sides, that the Islamic world that wanted this war with America, they've seen they've seen what happened. They've seen that it goes nowhere, and the Americans likewise spent trillion dollars. Got a lot of people killed. They've got no real desire for more of this, right? And in that sense, I see the whole thing as really taken a lot of the wind out of the sails that this movement initially had. I mean, would you agree with that? Disagree with that?
I'm not sure what the experiment is you're referring to. You had various, you had a secular Muslim leader in Saddam Hussein, fairly unpleasant character, but was keeping the country together.
Yeah.
He was toppled, and we handled the situation badly. And you've got a whole load of different groups springing up in Iraq. Some religious, some not religious, or varyingly religious. Some saying that they were religious, all sorts of complicated things going on. I mean, you just have to look at the electoral lists.
But I was looking at more, not the impact in Iraq, but the impact over the entire Islamic world. I mean, do you think that there is this desire still that, all we have to do is get a war with America and everything will be okay?
Well, no, I mean, if you're sitting in Iran, you're bricking yourself, because you've got a U.S. army in Afghanistan and a U.S. army in Iraq. You've got one on either side, and so I think the calculation there is rather different. No, I mean,
that's if you like from the governmental side. From the actual point of view of your average Arab on the street, as you said. Have they sort of shifted towards more of these terrorist attacks will make things better, or not?
Well, I mean, Iran's not Arabic.
I know. I was just paraphrasing you.
Yeah, but if you take Iran, no, I think there's still quite a lot of hostility towards the US. Now, there's a lot of hostility internally to their government as well.
Yeah.
Complex situation there.
I mean,
if you look at somewhere like, because most places now aren't absolute dictatorships. You have some semblance of democracy, like Egypt. Obviously, it's not what we would consider a fully functioning democracy, but there are democratic traits there. And so it's, I don't know. I mean, if you go to
London, what I was more after isn't the sort of governmental responses of various countries, or the sort of political effect, but the shift in the opinion of all the people in these countries. in that, you know, I don't doubt that they all still hate America, but do they hate America more or less? Do they still think that, yeah, we ought to be more sympathetic to, you know, blown up Americans or something, or, you know, civilian things in America?
I don't know. I mean, there was quite a lot of opposition to what happened on 9/11 at the time.
There were also people dancing in the streets, but...
Well, yeah, that was the footage from Palestine when they didn't actually know what was going on.
Yeah.
But the point I was trying to get to is if you look at Palestine and so on, what's going on there, and Lebanon and Jordan, there still does seem to be an amount of support for terrorism, doesn't there?
Yeah, there is support, but that's not... You know, is it going in the right direction or the wrong direction? Is it increasing or decreasing?
Well, I think that's a very hard question to answer.
But it is the important question, yeah.
But this is the thing, you could, amongst some groups increasing, some groups decreasing. I'm not sure what the aggregate would be. Because you know, if you look at Lebanon, you've got to account for the Druze, the Christian, you know, the Christians and the Muslims there. And you know, you've got like, I'm not sure I can answer the question because it's such a complicated issue, and it's quite hard to do. It's quite hard to do polling there.
No, it is. You know, to an extent, the only way you can do this is by sort of skimming the media, and yeah, I mean, it doesn't.
Yeah, because the media covering the eastern end of the Mediterranean are completely unbiased and, you know, aren't connected to fairly unpleasant groups.
But Landon,
I mean,
even that taken into account, any information is better than no information.
Yeah, only if you're aware of the biases and prejudices that it comes with.
Yeah. Well, that's information too, you know. And if you like, you know, I was asking you for an opinion. I wasn't asking you for some sort of, you know, research point or something. I mean, it's, yeah, and it really was that simple. Iraq War. Now that we've actually fought it and actually paid the price.
Sure. I'm really not sure which way it goes.
Fine.
I mean, it's not obvious to me. I mean, I would suspect that in Palestine, what you've probably got, at least in Gaza Strip, is you've got a split where you've got one, you know, a group that has moved so that it is more strongly opposed to terrorism, and a group that is more strongly supportive of it, that is polarized.
Correct. Okay. Fine.
You know, how that works in Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, I'm not in a position, or the West Bank, I'm not in a position to comment.
But you know, by the way that you just said polarized,
I just don't know, and I'm not, you know, I'm not prepared to make a, you know, to make a guess on that.
Yeah, on that very point where you were said about polarizing societies, and in many respects, actually polarizing a society isn't necessarily a bad thing. So if you actually have a society like this, and you actually polarize it, and it becomes bimodal, the thing is that with all good, what are they called, insurgencies, you need the support of the populace, correct? Yeah. In other words, if you're a bunch of terrorists or freedom fighters, you need the support, the contiguous support, and the reason that is because if your guys get killed, you actually need to refurbish them, and the only way you can refurbish them is with people actually moving over this line with time. So if you can actually polarize the situation,
rather more complicated than that.
I know, but to a first degree approximation,
as in it's, you know, you don't actually need people moving over that line. And one thing is you can shift where the line is.
Okay, you can translate it, but that's still people moving over the line.
Look, for instance, at the revolution in Cuba.
Yeah.
You know, where for a long time they were able to resupply themselves from very small amount. I see where you're taking the argument, but you don't actually need many people in country to support yourself. The other thing is you've got to remember that, unlike, for instance, my example of the Cuban Revolution, the various insurgent groups or terrorist groups in Palestine are being mightily supported by external actors. Syria,
in which case this wouldn't right, but in situations where this does, I accept that this is not a panacea, right? But generally, you need to replenish your guys from somewhere, and the only way you can sort of get someone who is, say, willing to kill for the cause is from someone who is almost willing to kill for their cause over time. So if you can actually polarize the civilization, make it bimodal, you actually reduce the actual flow rates of people who become radicalized, at which point this sort of becomes a cult, and it becomes more likely to whatever, extinction by attrition.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that applies at all in the area, because you're working on the basis that the rightward bulge is that small, and I'm really not sure it's that small.
Oh, it's minuscule. I mean, with radical Islam, it's almost insignificant.
Whoa. We're talking about the West Bank here. You think support for groups like Hezbollah is minuscule? Really?
The number of people. I mean, first of all, in terms of the actual fraction of the Islamic world, the West Bank is nothing. Yes.
Well, hang on, no, but we're talking about a specific example here.
I wasn't on that
talking
example.
About this example of Palestine, the eastern end of the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
There is substantial support for Hezbollah.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah. But in terms of the number of people in Islam who would be willing to, say, kill for their religion, it's 1 in 1,000, something like that. Maybe not even that.
I don't know what the figure is. I mean,
but it's tiny.
Yeah, it's really not very much.
But it is still 100 times bigger than the Christians who do the same, or whatever, or the Buddhists especially, or the Jainists, or
whatever.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, this is largely irrelevant. Generally it's small, but
it's tiny. Yeah.
I mean, this gets on to David Kilcullen's point about the accidental guerrilla. The reasons why people get involved in religious, in religious groups that carry out terrorism and so on, quite often aren't about religion. There's other factors at play there.
Yeah.
One of which is actually boredom. Can actually be quite an important factor.
Give them PlayStations.
Sorry?
Give them PlayStations. I was just lightening the mood.
Yeah, well, actually, yes. Rather than PlayStation, give them jobs.
Yeah.
Anyway, it is now 20 to 1 in the morning here, and I think I should probably finish up there.
We've only got 23 minutes left on the camera anyway, and for those who, I did say that I would get this up, but I wasn't expecting. How many hours have we done?
4 hours 40. I mean, there's been various problems along the way.
Even if we spent half an hour, that's still 4 hours.
Yeah.
And how much progress have we actually made?
Well,
We've more or less drawn a circle around the areas that we disagree with and still disagree on them, yeah?
Well,
there are bits that we agree on, but I don't know. Some